if you couldn't control the ball, you couldn't play football. And I was lucky enough at that time to get in with Wally at Celtic Park when he had these small exclusive group called the Wee Diamonds, and they were all guys that could control and pass the ball, you know. Douglas, McCarry, Brian McLaughlin, Andy Ritchie. The names, Wally would rhyme them all after you. He's well into his 70s now and he was still there. They could all control and pass the ball. It wasn't a problem. Football was never ever going to be a problem to me. So a lot of things, like scoring goals, participating in the making of goals. That was a strength to my game. You know, folks out there who watched it over the years, they tell you I couldn't defend, I couldn't tackle, I couldn't head on the ball, I couldn't go after the length of my arm and things that I couldn't do. I tended to concentrate on the things that I was good at, and that was scoring goals. I was a good finisher. I could finish. There was no panic attacks in the box. I was cool, calm, calculated with what I had to do, and I like to make other goals for other people around about. I get a great deal of pleasure out of that as well. Being a main participant in the making of a goal was important, just as important as it was in score.
What is it? Brilliant at that, Andy.
Thank you.
Why is it today when we go out on a Saturday and look at football matches, so few people can do that, can track the ball, pass the ball, run into space, whatever. What's going on?
We don't practice enough as kids. And I remember my spell at Celtic Park when I went there with Tommy Burns as a coach. And we used to have maybe 30 or 40 kids at training sessions. And everything had to be organised. From the moment they were dropped off in their big 4x4s or their Volvo estates, and they poured out, they had their bags and everything else. And everyone, the mothers and fathers were saying, how long will they be? We'll be here an hour, it'll only be an hour. And they come in for an hour, everything was organised for them. Then they went way back home again and they never played football until they come back in again. Occasionally they'd kick a ball at school. School stopped competitive sports. You know, you'd be hard pressed to see kids out in the football park now. You drive by football parks or whatever and you see them, they're empty. You know, everything has to be structured now and organised. Somebody somewhere in their wisdom has decided that we can coach football players, we can bring them in and make them football players. That's not the case. A good coach will make a good footballer better. He'll not make a bad footballer a good one. And when you look at the situation of your kids, we just don't play enough, we don't practice enough. What was it Gary Clare said? The more I practice, the better I get. You know?
If you've got a football club now, say 12, 30, and you see them all coming out into their 4x4s, their Mercedes or whatever, that's it for the day. Good night. They don't come back, they don't maybe do body weights or whatever, extra practice. Try to hit I remember my neighbour at Crail was Danny McLennan. Danny McLennan told me how he told John White how to make the ball curve. Whatever. Hit or a spot in the terracing ball, how he used to aim for it in the afternoons. That didn't seem to be. And these kids are ready, they've got their hands on the honey pot.
It's basically too late by that time. You know, when you journalist guys turn up at training parks and whatever, you see the back end of their courses, the BMWs and Mercedes driving out the car park at 1 in the afternoon. If you're hoping to give that player the skills, or more skills, or the necessary skills, it's too late by that time. They're in the first team, they're participating, they should have that by that time. I'm talking about the grassroots. You know, we pay a lip service in football now to the grassroots. It's all about providing 15 tracksuits and 15 bags and 15 polo shirts for the kids. It's not about the actual content of what they're learning. It's not the Wally Fernie content. When I turned up at Celtic Park as a 14-year-old boy for my first training session that Tuesday night, we came down the tunnel, they put the floodlights on, which was a big enough high in itself. And I remember running down the tunnel and Wally Fernie had a big bag of balls, and as he ran out, he just lifted your arm up and put a ball underneath it. He says, here you go son, that'll be the best friend that you'll ever have in your life. That'll never run away and leave you. Just you keep a hold of that. And we ran once through the track, to the back of the goals, to the grass, and everything else thereafter was done with that bag of wind. And now we look at it and we say, no, it's all about structures, it's all about putting teams in 4-2-4, 4-3-1. You know, when I went to Celtic Park, I signed for Celtic as a centre half. You know, and somebody in their wisdom thought, well, it was a fair assumption. I came from Belsill, I was 6'2", why not replace Big Billy McNeil? And I remember being at Barrafield one day in a boys' game, and Big Jock was there again, and the game started 20 minutes. And he came on the park, thundered on the park, stop! Stop the game, stop! Blew the whistle and stopped. You, well, I could feel myself shrink. You came here. What's your name? I said, you're Ritchie. You centre half? Well, of course. You're a centre half? He says, you can't run, you can't tackle, you can't header the ball. What are you doing playing centre half? So you come up and stand beside me, and I never played as a centre half at Celtic again. Somebody decided that, you know, because Spurs were using a big tall striker called Martin Shivers, and I could control the ball and pass the ball, that all of a sudden I'd become a centre forward. I never played as a centre forward till I went to Celtic. I played as a right half, right back at Belsill YMCA. And then they decided, kids go to football clubs now, and they go in and they're potholed by saying, this is what they do, wee Jimmy's outside right, and Big Rab's a left full back and somebody else. And see if they don't crack it there at that moment in time. And it might have been somebody in their school 3 years previous that decided they were a left back or a right winger. And then they take time to teach them the rudiments of the game. And the rudiments of the game haven't changed any more the day than they were 30 years ago when Willie Fairley put that ball underneath my arm. It's all about being able to control the ball. And the better you can control the ball, the better the football player you'll be.
After your spell in London, you came back to football with St Mirren. Can you just tell us the Can you tell us the events that led to the life ending in London and suddenly a return to Scotland, and you're working with Morton's great rifles?
That statement was about as popular as genital herpes, wasn't it? You could have led me on a bit easier than that. I came back to St Mirren. Jimmy Bowen, who had played with me at Celtic Park, had got the job at St Mirren. I knew Jimmy very well. He was a pain in the arse to Morton supporters. And he offered me a job at St Mirren looking after the kids down there and helping them with the first team. Finances were a bit low. And I think that was the first time. I never thought about going back into the game again. I never thought about... Somebody put it in the newspaper, it was coaching. And it's so far removed what I was doing for coaching is fine. I'm not a coach. I would claim to be a coach. I don't wear tracksuits. I don't run about it. Because I find that 70% of the game when I played it, I hadn't a clue basically what I was doing. People would say, how did that happen? How did, you know, and it came naturally. And when things come naturally, and you've got the rhythm of what you're doing, you try to control the ball and have a football brain. It's called technical ability now, you know, it's like, yeah, it's just a new name to have an ability, natural ability to play the game, to be able to do the things. Jimmy Johnson told me that 90% of the football that he played was played in his heat. Wasn't he played on Celtic Park or anything else? He'd seen it, he visualised it, he knew what was coming next. He could avoid it. Most times he did, sometimes he didn't. But it came from within. Somebody would say, how did that happen? People still to this day, all the years after I finished playing, I'll be able to recollect something that I did. And Jesus, I couldn't remember 10 minutes after I'd done it, so how am I going to remember 5 years later? And I acknowledge it by nodding my head in that knowing way as if I really know what they're talking about. I haven't a clue. So, you know, you can structure things in football to be of a defensive nature. But see, when you want to be offensive, you want to be creative, you want to do all the things that come about scoring a goal, don't listen to anybody that tells you it knows what they're doing. You know, they really don't. It's off the cuff. It's done in a split second. Jim McLean said about me, and it's probably the only likeable thing that he ever voiced in my direction at all, was when he said, Andy Ritchie's probably the best player I've ever seen at assessing a situation quickly.
You did.
And how do you do that? You couldn't say, I'm going to coach kids into doing that, I'm going to do it. If I was going back to be a coach, I would have to borrow what Willie Fernie did for me all these years ago and say, come on, we'll go and we'll learn how to control the ball. And the ball will never leave you. You'll need to be that way. That'll be your best friend for the rest of your life. That's the only coach. And if that's all I've got, it's not really a lot to be offering people on a daily basis.
If you couldn't coach Andy, you certainly spot the talent. So you go back to Celtic.
Yeah. Well, at that time at Celtic I'd been in hospital when I was coaching the kids, and when I come back out of hospital I had about 12-week recovery time, so I couldn't get onto the training ground with the kids again, and not so much the training ground, that sounds pompous, to get out and watch them playing football, because I had to stay off my feet for a long time. And when I came back to Celtic Park, they'd just been beaten in the League Cup final with Raith Rovers, and to say the place was bad, it was lower than a snake's belly at that time. So Tommy Burns had spoken to us about taking up a job on the scouting side because the recruitment of players was going to be required, and he needed bodies on the ground, and he trusted me enough to be able to go in there. He says, you know enough about football, you know the type of players that we need to bring here, you know enough about Celtic, I know you'll not let me down. So there you go, I want you to come and scout for me. And it was Tommy Burns that suggested that. I'd never thought for a minute that that would be a job for me. And I did it for a year under those circumstances, and 5 years thereafter as a chief scout at Celtic.
You've got some great players to play good, and
We're good players. I remember Celtic had just moved to Hampden to play while the new Celtic Park was being built. And the first job that I got was we were told, Fergus had told Tommy that there was £1 million in the kitty, and we could sign somebody for £1 million. I thought about putting my boots on then, but I discovered Smirnoff by that time, so that was. And I went to see players playing and look at them, and without being disrespectful to people, I hope I'm not, but Thomas has said to me, go and find people who are better than what we have. And as I say, with all due respect, Celtic and Wally Faulkner and Simon Donnelly up front. So trying to find a centre forward to be better than they two was a blind man, the fucking Galton horse could be done. The important part of that was that £1 million had to be spent wisely, because the wee guy with the cross eyes upstairs was watching everything, and Tommy Burns was under pressure. So we found a guy in Holland called Pierre Van Hooydonk, who played for Mac Breda at that time, and watched him a couple of times and brought him. I actually the first time I seen Pierre Van Hooydonk was in video, and I think every manager in England had seen the video. And I was watching a lad called Ernie Stewart as well, an American right winger Tommy Burns was interested in. And the video was at 45 minutes, and Van Hooydonk must have scored 40 goals in it. And there was not 2 goals the same. I rewind that tape and I played it again, he scored with his right foot, he slewed it in the corner, he rolled it in with his left foot, he butted one in, he had a free kick, he headed one in for a corner kick, he had a penalty kick. I said to Tommy Burns going by in the office, can you see this big black guy's playing here? He's running out of ways of scoring goals. And we watched him, we went to Mac Breda, and we seen the big fella player there, and Tommy managed to squeeze him into Mac Breda for £1 million. And that was the first of the signings that we produced at Celtic Park.
He was a shy boy.
Very shy. He was an adopted boy into a white family over there. Very, very shy. It took him about 4 weeks to tell us what his name was, I couldn't pronounce his name anyway. Van Ritchie didn't. I called him everything, And it was very, very quiet. And then all of a sudden, you know, he knew he could play and he could score goals, and the Celtic supporters loved him, they had a new hero. And then, like a lot of footballers do, and a lot of modern day footballers do, he changed his agency. The people who had brought him up through the system at Nativeda and got him his move to Celtic, all of a sudden became surplus requirements, and new Dutch agents had come into the game, and they were filling his head full of nonsense. And also as well, he'd signed a 3-year contract at Celtic and was more than delighted with the wages and everything else, the conditions that were on offer to him. And within 14 months, he had developed a terrible disease called selective amnesia. He forgot that he signed that contract, and he forgot that he was more than happy to take it, and somebody else was telling him that he could get a shilling or two more. And then he made up this ridiculous statement of saying that Fergus had promised him if he did well. What Fergus meant was, if you do well and at the end of 3 years, then we'll look at it then. But if you were happy to do it then and the club are happy to pay you. We Fergus once said to him, what happened if you'd failed here when you came to Celtic? Would you have given us your money back? You know, Big Pierre was like snow off a dike then. But he made the ridiculous statement of saying that the offer that Celtic had made him at that time was an offer that would be made to the homeless, or some stupid statement like that, you know. But he was badly advised. He was badly advised.
At that time, Andy, of course, he wasn't the only one. You had Canio, you had George Cadetti, people like that, who were all tremendously talented players, but also very kind of volatile personalities, weren't they?
Of course they were. It was blue touch paper. You just didn't know when it was going to go off on you, you know. Maybe not so much George Cadetti, certainly Paolo. You know, Paolo I'd spoken to a friend of mine who had people working at Juventus, and they told me that Paolo would be fantastic. The supporters would love him, he would help them off their seats, and he would do fantastic things, and the manager would love him for 4 months. Yeah, but we signed him in a 2-year contract. What about the rest of the time? He said, well, just watch me. I remember it was only about 3 months into the contract at Celtic, and he made a big impression initially. He came in and hit the ground running, Paolo Di Canio. And I got a phone call at home one night, and it was from Paolo, claiming that he wouldn't stay a minute longer here, and he was on his way home. And that was it, finished. He'd be in the morning, and he would cancel his contract at Celtic, and he would go, and he would be home within 24 hours. So I got in the car and I drove over to his house. It was over near Hampden, beautiful big house. It's got the driveway, got the corner. And all the way over, I'm thinking, I wonder what's wrong. Maybe something's happened, or somebody said something to him at the club, or maybe he's not happy with the tactics of the team and the guys that he plays with. All the way out in Hampden, got his big gravel driveway, pull up outside, and there's Paolo standing outside. He's waving his hands up, keep magic calendar. I said, Paolo, what's the matter? Come in, Mr. Ritchie, come in. And he could only say 2 or 3 words at that time. His English was poor. And his wife was there. She was crying. I thought, oh, Jesus, what's crying now? He says, Andy, we have a problem. I said, what is it? Then he started to show me, pointing at things because his English was poor. The problem that he had was that the people that we had organised to go and clean their windows every fortnight had to come up and do it. And there was me standing in his house at 10 to 10 that night thinking, what a prick. It felt like that sometimes. It felt like that. You know, George Cadetti was the same as well. George Cadetti came highly recommended to me. That I was lucky enough to get in the manager's office after the game that Celtic played Barcelona, and Bobby Robson was the manager of Barcelona at that time, and Tommy Burns had said to me to come in, so we had the proverbial cup of tea, gin and tonics, do whatever they do. And he was in early, and we're chatting, what are you doing here? He says, I'm the chief scout here. He's always looking for players, general football conversation. Yeah, always looking for good players, you know. And he had a little lad playing in the middle of the park one night, a wee baldy guy called Ivan de la Peña, who was magic. I said, I wouldn't mind taking him for 6 months on loan. He would be a star here. And he said, oh, he'll be a great player for Barcelona. They had the chat, and then the way out the door, I'll never forget it, Bobby Robson came across. Nice to meet you. And he put his hand out to me. He shook my hand, which was a bigger thrill than anything else. And in my hand was a wee piece of paper. And I opened the wee piece of paper up, and the name of George Cadet was on it. And I'd been speaking to him about needing somebody to go and play up front with Pierre. Somebody that could play on the shoulder of people. And I showed it to Tommy Burns after that when he'd left, and I told him what had happened. And he'd remembered them for the game that Portugal had played Scotland in. Alan McCoy broke his leg that night.
5-1 was it?
5-1. And, you know, he was available. He'd even actually put what he thought the price would have been. He put £750,000 in the corner of tiny inn, and Celtic got him for £650,000. And he came loaded up with baggage, but his baggage was personal. His baggage was a marriage-related situations, and his wife, who basically wasn't a well person at that time. And George had that one in Portugal and thought they brought it to Glasgow, it would change, but it just stayed the same. So he wasn't so bad as a person. The other two just, you know, there was no way other than the fact that they were always going to leave. But the saving grace out of the whole thing was that for £1 million for Pierre Van Hooydonk, Celtic got £4.2 million. Unfortunately, attached to that, they got that prick Ritchie as well. George Cadetti was £650,000 when he came in, 3.8 for Celta Vigo, they got when we sold them back. Paolo Di Canio was the same. Paolo Di Canio came in at 1.5 million and left for Sheffield Wednesday for 4 million. So see, at the end of it, I could put my hands up and say, well, we knew at the time we were signing sick pups, we knew that. But there was nobody who knew any better about a sick pup than Andy Ritchie. And we could still turn around at the end of the day and say we made money on them. And the money was going to be there if we needed to go out and replace it and spend again.
Another piece of business, Andy, I think you were involved in with Andreas Tom. When although the Berlin Wall had come down by then and there was no East and West Germany as such, I remember working on a story where the suggestion was he had actually been an active member of the Stasi, who were the East German secret police. I remember going for lunch one day and asking him the question, and all I got was a smile and a shrug, so I presume that was confirmation. Were you aware, Andy, of that suggestion or anything in his manner and his behaviour?
Well, most of it, it's hard to believe it, just what I've said there in regards to the previous three, that we did any kind of identification into their background at all, you know. Andy Tom was different. So say the unification of the country, I mean, we were actually interested in my strike partner at Bayer Leverkusen rather than Andy, but he wasn't available and they wouldn't sell, so it wouldn't be any less than truthful to say that Andy was the second choice. We had heard those rumours, it would be suffice to say, but other than asking the person straight to their face whether any of these rumours were true or not, and really, to be honest with you, I had to go and look up books to find out what the fucking Stasi was. I was a bit too educated for me, you know. So that was looked into, but the main problem with Andy Tom was the starting base. You know, the money that was agreed to buy a Leverkusen and everything else that came along with it was ideal. It was what they wanted to pay, it was previously what was in the budget. But the problem with Andy was he turned up with 2 people from Bayer Leverkusen and 3 people from Barclays Bank pension fund in London, and then spent the rest of the day tormenting Fergus McCann with these 3 people there trying to find the best possible way to pay £14,000 a week into a pension plan. When really we only wanted them to sign and play football for Celtic. And I remember about 6 weeks after that, travelling to a game in Germany, to a youth game, and Bayer Leverkusen youth team were there. The physiotherapist was there from the first team with the youth team. And I remember seeing him because I'd been round about their stadium a couple of times. And he came over in almost perfect English, asked me how Andreas was settling in at Celtic Park. I said, yeah, he seems to be settling in well. His family are settling. Yes, they're settling. He says, Andreas will be a good friend to your physiotherapist. And all of a sudden it was like the tab advert. Everything became clear. And he became a good friend to the physio. Andreas Tom could be 6 weeks out with a broken shoelace.
Can you paint us an incident of Fergus?
That must have been the only person in Scotland or in Britain or the whole world that liked Fergus McCann. I liked Fergus McCann. And the dealings that I had with him and the time that I spent, he was a complex character, would probably be the right way to put it. But as it was stated to me that when these people at Celtic Park, all these people, I remember being here many, many years ago in the Guildhall, and Brian Dempsey was here and I was down one night and we had something in here that was called Celts for Change, they had something. And I came here and listened to Brian Dempsey for 8 or 45 minutes in here, and it was absolutely magic. He had everybody in the palm of his hand, and he claimed that he would be the new chairman of Celtic and Celtic would change. And it was a fantastic night. But see, when push came to shove, and the bank were calling for their £1 million, and all these great friends of Celtic, they were like snot up the night, they weren't there. Hugh Fergus came to the front, put his money up, and he bamboozled you guys, because he sat in front of you, and see all the things he told you that he was going to do. None of the press boys believed him. He told you there'd be a new Celtic, there'd be a new Celtic Park. They would have a team that would challenge for the Premier League in Scotland. There'd be new players here, there'd be investment in the club. He would invest his money and he would take out the very same amount of money as would be available to the supporters. And he did. There was a tier issue for £650. And at one stage that £650 share issue was worth 5 times that. Would have been cash to anybody that had that. A broker would do that and give you less than broker's fee. Fergus invested £8 million in Celtic and took 42 million out. He built a new stadium. Within the 5 years Celtic had won the Premier League and stopped Rangers doing 10 in a row with Don Jansen. And he said he would only last 5 years and he would move out and never take part in football again. And nobody believed him. And he took out the same amount of money that was available to the shareholders at that moment in time. And other people in their wisdom decided that they wanted to stay until the shares plummeted to being worth the centre of a donut. So I had no, any time I had dealings with Fergus, he was always perfect. He said to me one day about the signing of Mark Baduka, there'd be £3 million in the kitty, and if you have to go any higher, you need to pay it yourself. And I believed him. When I was dealing with him, it wasn't a problem. Strange complex. I remember he queried my expenses, you know. And by the way, I don't work for Inverclyde District Council. My expenses were always above board. I'm not a journalist or a councillor. And I remember we were on a bit of a banter around at the table one day and he was looking through, I'd been somewhere for a couple of days and come back down and he was sitting, I think he was having a bit of fun with the financial director, Eric Riley, at that time. And he queried the fact that I'd had chicken Kiev was a meal in his own inimitable way. Fergus was saying, what's the difference? What's the difference between chicken Kiev and chicken? I thought, he's taking the piss. But I better answer him. I says, well, what they do is they put garlic butter in the middle of it so that when you cut it, they got butter. He says, no. 4 marks 50. I'd been in Germany. That was the difference in price between chicken Kiev and ordinary chicken. And I knew I was dealing with a character then. If he was watching for £4.50 or 4 marks 50, you know, how could you possibly pull the wool out of that man's eyes?
Tell us about your sojourn in the Fergus McCann corridor.
Oh, the corridor. Yeah, there was a back corridor that only Fergus McCann used at Celtic Park, off limits to everybody else. It meant he never needed to walk through the main building, you know. It was totally, completely for his use, but I used to sneak up every so often. You know, it was too much of a bother to walk all the way around, especially if it was raining outside and I'd got the corridor. And I met him on the corridor, and he passed me, I've got away with it, he's not saying anything. Andy. And he told me that day, he said, did you take the £650 share issue? Yeah. He says, well, sell them now. And walked away and left me. Go off with that, you know. It's a sackable offence using that back corridor. Within 6 weeks, those share issues had dropped totally and completely to nothing, and he had sold his. You know, and if he had been able to do that publicly, by law you're not allowed to do that, but if he'd been able to do that, I'm sure he would have done it. He used to look out the window, and he said to me one day, he said, look, I can't believe that. What is it? People standing out in the pouring rain down Genfield Street, queuing to buy tickets for a Celtic match. standing in the rain with their money, they're real supporters. They're real people. They're not people that phone up with credit cards and do whatever. They're real people. That was our last £20 note. They'd be standing there to buy a ticket for that game. He says, if we can't build a new stadium for those supporters. And that's the way every chairman should treat their supporters. Because see the people that go along to see football matches, whether it's at Celtic, Rangers, Morton, St Mirren, wherever it is, without that, there is no football. Football's immaterial. It makes no difference. If it's played to empty stadiums, it's only another game. It's the people coming along to do that. And if people who run football clubs, or chairmen of football clubs now, don't treat their supporters honestly and openly, they're doing them a disservice. And the only thing that the supporter has in his favour is he stops going, and yet the chairman will find well that you good people will not do that, you know, and there's a lot like it.
I assume that the working for Celtic again was a great dream for you, but soon the dream was broken in the bits.
Ryan, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm saying to him that it must have been a dream for Andy going back to Celtic, whatever, and his chief scout, relationship with Fergus McCann, whatever, but I'm saying soon the dream was broken into bits. Jansen left.
Yeah, Jansen left and Dr. Joseph Weingloss came in, and I worked for a year with Dr. Joseph when we'd signed one or two. Well, we really only had the money to do a Mark Viduka deal that year. Dr. Joseph brought Lubo Moravchik in himself. He'd known him for years gone by. Anyway, I had been at Celtic Park for 6 years and was really enjoying what I did. You know, there was sometimes I used to think that it was the best job in the world. But I'd always a hankering as well. It wasn't the best job in the world because I'd applied 3 times for the Morton job and 3 times I'd been knocked back. So it couldn't have been the best job in the world. But I had been there. They brought in, Fergus moved on as well at the same time, and Alan MacDonald came in as chief executive and brought in Kenny Dalglish, and John Barnes became the manager. And at that time they said to me, well, we'll just wait and see what happens. But about 3 months before Kenny Dalglish had got the job, I was in the office one day when I got a phone call from Monica, who was the main secretary at Celtic Park, and she phoned me downstairs. She said to me in the phone office, Andy, I've got a phone call for you. I says, good. Who is it? She says, it's the King. I says, fuck's sake, I thought Elvis had left the building. She says, no, it's Kenny on the phone. Kenny don't. I said, I will put him through. I think somebody winds up. Anyway, Kenny comes on the phone. Andy, how you doing? How you doing? I say, I'm all right. He says, listen, what I want you to do is, what are you doing tomorrow? It was a Friday. I says, oh, I'm not really too sure yet. I've got a couple of things I'm not sure, because in the football scouting game, you don't show anybody a bird's nest. I says, so I don't know what I'm doing. He says, I'll tell you what, even if I go down to Newcastle, he says, they're expecting you down there. I've ordered the tickets for you. He says, if you speak to Big John McGarry down there, who was the chief scout, I've organised it. Put the portfolio together for, there was a Greek defender, can't even remember his name now, and Norberto Solano. He says, and put wheels in motion for to bring him to Celtic. I says, Kenny, I can't do that. I work for Ferguson, Dr. Joseph Weingloss. I can't, that's not within my remit to do that. And he just get it done. I says, Kenny, I'm telling you, I can't do it. Don't send the phone. I went to Dr. Joseph Weingloss himself within 30 seconds of that happening. I said, listen, is Kenny Dalglish coming back here as manager or what I mean? Because I'll tell you, and I told him the conversation. No. I said, well, you tell me because I'm employed by you, I work for you. You're my coach, you're my manager. He said, don't bother going to Newcastle. I said, okay, so I phoned up, got Monica to took me back through to Kenny, and I told him I wouldn't be at Newcastle because the coach has instructed me to go somewhere else, and in my capacity as chief scout, under obligation to do that. So by the time Kenny Dalglish and John Barnes came in, and I had played with Kenny many, many years before that, it'd be suffice to say that he wasn't happy about maybe that or other things. But I spent 6 weeks thereafter trying to speak to Kenny in regards to my position at Celtic Park. And I went on holiday, and as you always do, so I think it was Mallorca or something, I picked up the daily record when you're away, and then it's in the daily record, you know, that Andy Ritchie loses his job and Kenny McDermott gets his job. That had happened 2 seasons previously with Bobby Lennox, and he was a bigger Celtic man than many round about, so it wasn't really a great surprise. But
didn't you already know by then? Weren't you down at Chelsea a match? And
yeah, I went to Chelsea when Kenny was the manager of Newcastle, and he was there, we were playing Chelsea, and I met him in the front foyer, and he was less than gracious when he met him, you know, he was listen, it's what the F are you doing down here? Celtic don't have the type of money to be able to compete in this big league. He was very detrimental about the whole club, and then within 14 months he was claiming to the Celtic supporters that he was going to be the Messiah to them again. And Kenny was basically only coming up here to feather Kenny's own nest, that's all he was doing.
And it must have been a very traumatic time in your life, obviously. This is an ex-teammate who's treated you in a very shabby manner. How deep does the heart go? How much is the devastation?
Well, the devastation wasn't so much that Kenny treated me that way. It was just the fact that I thought myself I had worked quite well and worked particularly hard for Celtic. Nothing at all to do with Kenny Dalglish. Managers, coaches, they all come and go. But it's what you do for the club that matters. It doesn't matter whether it's Celtic or Rangers, Morton. It's what you do for the club. The club will always be there. People, personalities, they all move on. I was not disappointed with the fact that the achievements that were there weren't acknowledged by the club rather than Kenny Dalglish, you know. And I knew after about 6 weeks in the place exactly what Kenny was doing. I had attended the game at Portsmouth and met Harry Redknapp, and Harry Redknapp told me that Celtic, I was the chief scout, that told me that Celtic had signed Niall Berkovic for £6.5 million in the car park at Portsmouth that day, and I hadn't a clue about it. And by that time, I wasn't going to be prepared to get involved in that. Kenny didn't renew the contract and I left. And then within the space of about 6 to 8 weeks after that, they signed the Brazilian that nobody had ever heard of, nobody had ever seen. And they signed him for £5 million and nobody ever found out where the money went to. It was just an opportunity to basically do whatever they wanted at that time without anybody having any say on it. Bringing in people in and be able to spend money carte blanche and not really be made accountable for anything.
I think you've said, Andy, that he was probably the only Brazilian that couldn't play football.
That's right. I don't know where they got him. He must have
in the toilet.
You know,
Aye, main fucking forward though.
£5 million for the only Brazilian that couldn't play football. But then, when you look at the Celtic team now, you know, they've got the Chinese guy in there, there's 400 billion of the wee buggers, and he's the worst part of the player I've ever seen in
After you left Celtic, hard times ahead.
Yeah, they were difficult times, yeah. They were difficult times. Personally, they were difficult times. Yeah. Up till about 3 years ago, I like to think that they were the hardest times. Personally, they were the hardest times of my life. Unfortunately, my marriage broke down. I separated from my wife when I moved out. My health was not good. My physical health was poor and my mental health